There is something about the origins of Rome that defies logic. It doesn't begin with a peace treaty, nor with an agreement between peoples, nor with a military conquest. It begins with a crime, with abandonment, with a she-wolf, with two brothers who, before founding the most powerful city in history, were about to drown in the dark waters of the Tiber River. The history of Rome is not the story of a city that arose naturally from trade or agriculture. It is the story of a city born from violence, ambition, and broken brotherhood. And perhaps that is precisely why it became what it became, because Rome learned from its very first moment that power is not negotiated, it is conquered. Roman tradition, passed down by historians such as Livy and Plutarch, recounts that the city was founded in 753 BC by a man named Romulus. But the story begins much earlier, in a city called Alba Longa, located in the hills of Latium. There reigned Numitor, a just and respected king. But power, as always, aroused the greed of his younger brother, Amulius. Amulius was not only ambitious, he was cruel. With the help of a group of disgruntled nobles, he overthrew Numitor, usurped the throne, and killed all the male heirs of the deposed king. But one problem persisted: Rhea Silvia, Numitor's daughter. She was the only survivor of the royal lineage, and if she had children, they could claim the throne.
To ensure that no one could claim power in the future, Amulius made a decision he believed to be definitive. He ordered Rhea Silvia to become a Vestal Virgin, a priestess of the goddess Vesta, bound to maintain perpetual virginity. Any Vestal Virgin who broke her vow would be buried alive. Amulius thought that, in this way, Numitor's lineage would be extinct forever. But he underestimated the power of the gods. The Romans believed that the gods do not follow the laws of men, and the gods had other plans for Rhea Silvia. According to legend, she was visited by the god Mars himself in a divine vision. The god of war descended upon the Vestal Virgin in a ray of light, and twins were born to her, Romulus and Remus. When Amulius learned of the birth, fury took hold of him. But he couldn't simply kill them. The children were the sons of Mars. Killing them would be a direct challenge to the gods. So Amulius chose a more treacherous path. He ordered the twins to be thrown into the Tiber River, letting nature, or fate, do its work. Amulius's servants placed the babies in a wicker basket, carried them to the riverbank, and released them into the current. They believed the waters would carry them away, where they would drown or be devoured by wild beasts. But the river, however, had other plans. The waters of the Tiber, at that time, were higher than usual. A flood had raised the river level, and the wicker basket where the twins were placed did not sink.
It was carried by the current to a place where the bank was lower, where the reeds grew dense and the water calmed. There, in the place where nature offered shelter, the basket ran aground. And it was on the banks of the river that would one day become the heart of the empire that the twins encountered a creature that history would never forget, a she-wolf. The she-wolf is perhaps the most powerful symbol in all of Roman mythology. It is not a hero, it is not a god. It is a wild animal, a beast that should have devoured the defenseless twins, but instead protected them. The image of the Capitoline she-wolf suckling Romulus and Remus became the emblem of a city that always saw itself as a daughter of wild nature, of survival, of brute force combined with maternal instinct. Some say that the she-wolf was actually a prostitute, called Lupa in ancient Latin. Some believe that the story was invented to give Rome a divine and wild origin at the same time. There are scholars who point out that the she-wolf may have been a sacred animal for the ancient Italic peoples, and that the legend was a way of unifying different local traditions into a single founding narrative. But what matters is not the historical truth. What matters is what this story tells us about how the Romans saw themselves. They saw themselves as the offspring of a beast that nurtured them.
They saw themselves as survivors, as those who, even when thrown into the river to die, found a way to live. The she-wolf was not just an animal. She was Roman nature itself, wild, unpredictable, fierce when necessary, but also protective. The Romans did not see themselves as a civilization that arose from order and reason. They saw themselves as a civilization that survived chaos and from it created order. On the banks of the Tiber, the twins were found by a shepherd named Faustulus. He was herding his flocks in the hills when he heard cries coming from the riverbank. As he approached, he saw the she-wolf moving away from the babies, as if she knew the shepherd would take care of them. Faustulus took the twins to his hut, where his wife, Acca Larentia, raised them as if they were her own children. Romulus and Remus grew up among shepherds, learning to handle livestock, fight off thieves, and survive in a land that had not yet known cities. They grew strong, courageous, and with a burning desire to found something of their own. But fate, once again, would intervene. The simple life of shepherds was not what awaited them. They carried in their blood the lineage of the kings of Alba Longa, and the world needed to know this. One day, when they were already grown men, their lives changed forever. A dispute between shepherds revealed their true identity. They discovered that they were grandsons of Numitor, the rightful king of Alba Longa. And, upon learning the truth, they did what any hero would do. They took back the power. The discovery of their true identity was a turning point for Romulus and Remus. Until that moment, they had lived as shepherds, fighting off thieves and defending flocks. Now, they knew they were princes, heirs to a stolen throne. The thirst for justice, or perhaps the thirst for power, awakened in them. They gathered a group of loyal shepherds and peasants and marched on Alba Longa. Amulius, the usurper, did not expect an attack from the shepherds of the hills. When the twins stormed the palace, he was caught by surprise. Romulus and Remus killed Amulius with their own hands, avenging their grandfather and restoring Numitor to the throne. The old king, moved, embraced his grandsons and recognized them as legitimate heirs. But Romulus and Remus did not just want to inherit a kingdom, they wanted to build something new, something that would be theirs, a city that would bear their mark. The choice of location, however, would be the first major conflict between the brothers. Romulus wanted to build the city on the Palatine Hill, a hill that dominated a landscape, overlooking the river and the surrounding plains. Remus preferred the Aventine Hill, closer to the river and with easier access to trade. The dispute, which began as a debate, quickly turned into something darker. They couldn't agree. Each saw the future differently. For Romulus, the city should be high, protected, easily defensible. For Remus, the city should be flat, with direct access to the river, trade, and expansion. What began as a divergence of vision became a deadly rivalry. And, as so often happens in history, brotherhood did not withstand power. Romulus, in a moment of fury or calculation, killed Remus. Sources vary on exactly how the crime happened. Some say Romulus killed him with his own hands during the argument, in a fit of rage. Others say that Remus was killed by one of Romulus's soldiers when he jumped over the wall that was being built, in a gesture of disrespect and defiance. What matters is that Remus died, and Romulus founded Rome alone. The death of Remus is one of the darkest episodes in Roman history. There is no heroism here. There is no glory. There is only the brutality of a man who did what was necessary, or what he believed was necessary, to achieve his goal. Romulus did not mourn his brother. He moved on. He founded the city, erected the walls, and called it Rome. The name, they say, came from Romulus himself, although some sources suggest that Rome may originate from the Greek word Rome, which means strength. In any case, the city was founded, but the price was the blood of a brother. With Remus dead, Romulus traced the perimeter of the new city with a bronze plow. This gesture was not merely practical, it was sacred. The plow, in Roman tradition, was an instrument that united heaven and earth, and its use in the founding of a city was a religious act. The city would be surrounded by a wall that represented the separation between the civilized world and the wild world, between what was Roman and what was foreign. Roman tradition recounts that Romulus traced the furrow of the plow so that the uplifted earth would be inward, like a barrier. Anyone who transgressed that boundary would be punished with death. It was the first act of a city that would become famous for its laws, but also for its brutality. The city that Romulus founded was small. It was nothing more than a cluster of straw huts on top of a hill. But Romulus's vision was grand. He knew that the city would not grow if it had no inhabitants, and so he did something that would mark Rome forever. He opened its doors to all who wanted to come. Criminals, refugees, runaway slaves, landless men, all were welcome. Romulus understood that a city is not built only with noble citizens. It is built with people who are hungry to live, who want to start over, who are willing to do whatever it takes to survive. These men, often despised, became the first Romans. But there was a problem. Those men had no women, and a city without women could not grow. Rome was a city of lonely men, and Romulus knew that without families, without children, the city would disappear in a single generation. He tried to negotiate with the neighboring peoples. He asked that his daughters marry Romans, but the neighbors, the Sabines especially, refused. They saw the Romans as a mob of criminals and fugitives. They didn't want alliances with them. Romulus then made a decision that would define the character of Rome for centuries. He organized a great festival in honor of the god Neptune, invited neighboring peoples, especially the Sabines, and at the height of the celebration, when everyone was distracted by the games and festivities, his men kidnapped the women of the guests. It was Rome's first act of violence against its neighbors, but it was also the act that ensured the city had a future. The rape of the Sabine women is one of the most controversial episodes in Roman history. For some, it is a crime. For others, it is the moment when Rome showed its determination, its willingness to do whatever was necessary to survive. The Sabine women, after the initial shock, accepted their new husbands, and when their fathers returned to wage war against Rome, they intervened, placing themselves between the two armies and asking for peace. It was thus, with diplomacy and violence, that Rome began to grow.
The union between Romans and Sabines created a new identity, which would be the basis for Rome's future greatness. The city that Romulus founded was unassuming. A hill with straw huts, a stone wall, a few dozen families. But that small village contained within it the germ of everything that would come later: ambition, discipline, the ability to reinvent itself. Rome began as a refuge for outcasts and, paradoxically, became the most powerful city in history. Why? Perhaps because from its very first moment, Rome learned to make a virtue of crime. It learned that violence and law can go hand in hand. It learned that power is built with blood, but maintained with institutions. The history of Rome is the history of a city that was not afraid to be ruthless. Its first citizens were men who had nothing to lose. Its first women were stolen. Its first neighbors were defeated. Rome did not ask permission to exist. It simply existed. Romulus ruled for decades. Under his leadership, Rome grew, established alliances, and defeated enemies. He created the first Roman institutions: the Senate, composed of the wisest and most experienced men in the city; the tribes, which organized the population; and the first laws, which gave structure to the community.
According to tradition, he disappeared in a storm, taken away by the gods, or, according to other versions, assassinated by senators who feared his power. Be that as it may, the city he founded was already too great to depend on a single man. From then on, Rome would grow on its own. Rome was not born as an ordinary city. It was born as a a promise that power is not inherited, it is conquered, that strength is not a defect, it is a tool, that destiny does not wait, it is taken. The she-wolf nursed the twins founded the city conquered the world, and it all began with a crime, a river, a she-wolf, and two brothers who could not share the same dream. What makes Rome so fascinating is that its origin is a mixture of myth and reality, of violence and order, of brotherhood and betrayal. The Romans never tried to hide the brutality of their origins. On the contrary, they celebrated it. They were proud to be descended from a she-wolf, to have been founded by a man who killed his own brother. For them, this was not a shame. It was proof of their strength, of their ability to do whatever was necessary to survive. The image of the Capitoline wolf suckling Romulus and Remus is one of the most famous in the world. It is in museums, on stamps, on coins, on flags. It represents not only the origin of Rome, but a way of understanding power. Wild, brutal, maternal, and deadly at the same time. The she-wolf is a mother who nourishes, but is also a beast that can kill. What she represents is the ambiguity that has been at the heart of Rome since its first day. Rome was founded on crime, but built the laws that would govern the world. It was founded on the blood of a brother, but sheltered all who sought a home. It was founded on violence, but created the most enduring peace in ancient history. The Romans never tried to reconcile these contradictions. They simply accepted them. The story of the founding of Rome is a reminder that great civilizations are not built solely on virtue. They are built with ambition, with determination, and sometimes with cruelty. The she-wolf is the perfect symbol of this ambiguity. She is a beast, but also a mother. She is violent, but also protective. She is wild, but also civilizing. The she-wolf is not a hero, nor a god. She is something more primitive, more fundamental. She is nature itself, which creates and destroys, which protects and devours. Perhaps this is the true lesson of the she-wolf and the twins, that great civilizations are born not only from order, but also from chaos. That power is not always just, but it is always effective. And that sometimes what seems wild is what saves us. Rome did not choose its history chose it. And unlike so many others, it embraced what came. Even when what came was blood, fire, and a fallen brother. The Capitoline she-wolf remains one of the most powerful symbols in human history. She represents the brute force that is at the origin of all order, the violence that precedes the law, the instinct that precedes reason. And perhaps that is why she still fascinates us so much. Because deep down, all of us, like the Romans, are children of a she-wolf. We are survivors. We were shaped by chaos, and from it, we created order. Today, when we look at the ruins of the Roman Forum, the arches of the Colosseum, the columns of the Pantheon, it's hard to imagine that it all began on a hill with straw huts. It's hard to imagine that Rome, the eternal city, was once a hodgepodge of refugees and criminals. But that is the truth that legend preserves. Rome did not begin as an empire. It began as a dream. A dream of two brothers who could not share it. A dream that became reality through strength, cunning, and determination. The history of Rome is the story of how a small village by a river became the center of the world. It is the story of how violence and law, crime and order, the savage and the civilized merged into something new. It is the story of a she-wolf that nurtured the future. The Romans never forgot their origins. Even when their empire stretched from Britain to Mesopotamia, they continued to celebrate the she-wolf and the twins. They knew that without that humble and brutal beginning, there would be no glory, no empire, no Rome. The ruins of Rome are a reminder that even the greatest of empires can crumble. But the story of Rome's founding is a reminder that everything begins with a bold gesture, with a decision, with a dream. Rome, the eternal city, began with the blood of a brother spilled on the ground. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson of its history, that greatness does not require purity, it requires determination. And as long as the Tiber flows, as long as the hills of Rome rise, as long as the eagle soars in the sky, the memory of that beginning will remain alive. Because Rome is not just a city. Rome is an idea, the idea that anything is possible, even if it begins with a crime, with a river, with a she-wolf, and with two brothers who one day dreamed too big. The history of Rome is the history of ourselves, fighting against adversity, surviving chaos, and building something that can last forever. And deep down, we all carry a little bit of Rome within us.